Welcome in to the Sonic Truth Dynasty Focus podcast. My name is Tyler Knably from Player Profile, joined by Theo Greminger and the Podfather. How are we doing, guys? First time on the podcast. I'm pumped to be on here, and I'm ready to talk some Dynasty football. Let's get after it.
Fuck Allen, man. Fuck Allen. Fuck Allen.
Oh, no.
Fuck
no, do
Allen.
not fuck Allen.
Allen injected you with this brainworm of the Dynasty-focused podcast. It's just the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast. But you've heard him say it on a repetition for so many shows in a row that you said it too.
I had to pay homage to my fallen brother.
Listen. Yeah, and I will say Allen's one of my favorite bald people in the world. We miss him very much. It's official that he is just not going to be able to be on as many Sonic Truth episodes as he was previously. He was promoted, and therefore is going to have a little bit less time. This is really a free time activity. This is his hobby, coming on this show. Luckily, we have the fearless Tyler Knably in the wings, our producer now. This happens all the time. There's so many different shows. Dan Le Batard's show, the sports talk shows back through time have elevated the producer to a content creator, to being a voice on the actual program. So we're very excited to continue in that tradition, Tyler. Yesterday, I did rank some of my favorite bald analysts, from Bob Harris to Pat Thorman, talking to Ryan Reynolds. I wanted to make sure that Allen understands that he is my absolute favorite bald fantasy analyst, and that I was just talking about people that Ryan and I would have known. But for me, in my heart, it's Alan Seslowsky and it's Nate Liss. This is going to be one of the only episodes in show history with no bald men, because it was Nate, and then it was Alan, and again, Nate and Alan, these are my guys. So just, I know I received emails, podfather at rotounderworld.com. I saw the comments in the chat. How could you leave out Alan? How could you leave out Nate on your bald Mount Rushmore? And I wasn't creating a bald Mount Rushmore. I was just mentioning some other bald people that Ryan and I might have known. We were celebrating the bald, and we will celebrate the bald again today. We miss them. But if you can look at Tyler on the stream, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will notice that he has the opposite of a bald head. He has just a glorious mane. I'm wearing a vintage Eagles hat from my childhood to conceal what I did win best hair in my high school yearbook. So I do have great hair as well, but my hair is the hair of a 40-year-old man. Tyler has the hair of a 20-year-old, and it's majestic. So welcome, Tyler. Theo, we have some things to talk about every week.
Well,
in Dynasty, there's things to talk about.
Before we start, I'll say, you talk about building up and ranking, your favorite bald people, but it's the utter disrespect to the bald community. You go from having Alan Seslowsky, our favorite bald guy, to Tyler with this immaculate hair. It's like a 180. It's like somebody from corporate said, you know what, we've got to change it up on the Sonic Truth. We've got to add more hair to the visuals. I mean, it's just utter disrespect to the bald community. Shout out to you guys, bald people in the chat. We still have a lot of love for you guys.
Upgrade button. That's how I see it. We just had a massive, massive hair upgrade button on the show. Proud to have Tyler here. Well-deserved. So, since we last talked, Jordan Addison had another encounter with law enforcement. And we've been talking on our Discord. Y'all can subscribe to our Discord, by the way. So just type in Player Profiler on Discord. We're right there at Player Profiler on Discord. Now, I immediately scratched the name Jordan Addison off my draft list for startups. I'm not trading for him. I don't want him. The second encounter in less than a year with law enforcement, I'm out on Jordan Addison, but I want to hear what you two have to say about it.
Well, I'm not going to sell low. I think at this point I have a pretty decent amount of Jordan Addison on my Dynasty roster. So I had one trade offer, somebody trying to buy low. on an Addison in an FFPC league. I was offered like, it was nothing great. It was like Dallas Goedert and Mike Williams and like a third. And I'm like, just not quite enough for a player like Addison. I think that he is going to get 3 games, and I don't think this is going to be a death sentence for him. It's a weird one because there's not like a little bit of information missing. Some people are talking about was this alcohol, was it weed? People don't know. But for me, this is not the time to panic sell. This is the time to you're just kind of stuck with him. I'm not advocating going and trading for a bunch of Jordan Addison, but I'm not panic selling him.
I think personally, like, it comes down to the volume for me. And I think, like, because long-term, if we're just talking about the law enforcement stuff, yeah, but I don't think that's going to really play out in terms of like what his long-term value, like, it's not going to take a hit because he's had a couple law enforcement stuff like Tyree. I mean, he's not Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek's got it's the NFL. This happens all the time. We see it from a whole bunch of different receivers. For Jordan Addison, what do you mean? What?
It's one thing to have one incident.
Yeah.
But to have 2 incidents in less than a year, this tells me this is a troubled person. And we have a lot of different choices. Same ADP, I could have Jackson Smith-Njigba. Similar draft capital. I think it's actually a little bit better situation longer term because he's not dealing with Justin Jefferson in front of him. And so I could easily just avoid. I'm not saying sell low on Jordan Addison. If you've drafted Jordan Addison, you have to ride this out because now there's all this uncertainty. You have to let everything play out, let him have a few good games, and then you might consider trading him once his valuation stabilizes. But for me, my dynasty teams have been the better for just avoiding these guys because typically where there's smoke, there's fire, and it doesn't manifest for a year or two. But this is not someone who's taken their career seriously. It's not someone that's taken their life seriously.
Well, he's definitely not taking the incident seriously. The guy on his Instagram posted the picture of like the champagne bottle with the champagne glass.
He was by himself
like the next day, and he was by himself, just enjoying a nice, maybe like a little mimosa in the morning or something like that. So I don't know that, at the end of the day, I think Jordan Addison can play. And it's also a situation where Minnesota used a first rounder on him. I think, and he's 22 years old, and he produced last year. And what did they just do? They just drafted a rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. So for me, Minnesota sort of needs Jordan Addison. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson, those guys are very stable parts of the team. The offensive line is strong, but I don't see them wanting to go and get another wide receiver in like the first round this year. I think they want to put J.J. McCarthy in a situation where he is going to quickly produce. And I think they view their team as a sort of ascending team, a team that could conceivably contend in 2025 in J.J. McCarthy's second season. So for me, I think Addison's pretty stable in the organization. It sounds like the organization was mad at Jordan Addison, but I don't think this is hey, let's get out of it. Yeah, they were mad and disappointed.
I'd be mad on his behalf, right? I'd be mad. He needs to have a counselor assigned to him, okay? But the other problem is it may not be necessarily that there's an addiction issue or it could just be stupidity. That's also on the table, that this is just pure knucklehead behavior. Slashy in the chat reminds us that when Jordan Addison was drafted, the first words out of his mouth were, "Let's get paid." Okay? So, I mean, this is it's a very difficult sport. It's not like some sports where you can show up and you can get by in athleticism for a long period of time. People think that about football, right? The casuals think that about football. I used to think that. I'm guilty. I'm the converted. I used to think this wasn't a big deal. I used to think people were overreacting, and I'm just drafting Justin Blackmon like you guys are crazy. What do I care? Justin Blackmon can play. Did you guys see him at Oklahoma State? He's amazing.
Justin Blackmon was awesome.
Justin Blackmon's awesome. What do I care? Right? He's going to figure it out. And the next thing you know, he's out of the league. Right? So this is something that I had to learn to take these red flags more seriously than most. And it has allowed me to sidestep a lot of these landmines in Dynasty. And I can promise you, Jordan Addison's not finished in the league. He's got, just like Justin Blackmon, Josh Gordon, they had moments. How many different buy and sell windows opened and closed with Josh Gordon in a decade? Right? There's going to be windows. So you find the window, you find that he gets a 100-yard game, everything is settled in, you trade him. That's what you do with Jordan Addison. You don't sell low now, you wait. He will have a window where you can get out, but there's no reason that you need to deal with this. If you're a dynasty manager, do not trade for him and do not draft him. There's so many other better options. If it were 3 or 4 years ago, maybe we have a different conversation because players like Jordan Addison were a little more rare around the league. Now every team has like 3 of these guys.
I might buy low a little bit if somebody's looking to really, really get out of Dodge here, Matt. I'm not going to like not take on a Jordan Addison if it's a 50 cents on the dollar type, hey, I'm really, really worried about this situation type thing. At the end of the day, this was a terrible situation, but no one was hurt. He's okay. Nothing happened here. This is going to be something that's going to be pretty cut and dry, I think. And at the end of the day, this is a guy that had 70 receptions, 10 touchdowns, over 900 yards receiving last year out of a first-round pick. So, again, does he lose some dynasty value? Yes. And he moved down our rankings slightly at Player Profiler. There's just a lot of competition. I'll say the one thing, Matt, is in his tier of wide receivers where he was getting drafted in dynasty startups, there's a tremendous amount of competition, especially with this rookie class that has come in. So you can sort of avoid him at cost, like Matt's talking about. But if it's a trade, that's a different matter, because if somebody wants to get out of Dodge on Jordan Addison and they're really, really worried, you could take on a guy who just performed very, very well, who I think is going to be suspended for 3 games. And the team, again, just drafted a quarterback in the first round. So I think
that's
they're going to have
fine.
stability.
That's absolutely fine. You can do that, just like those that traded for Josh Gordon and then got out at the right time. You can market time this thing. Absolutely. People did that. There are people that doubled up. They traded for Josh Gordon low, sold high, did it again. Right? So you can keep doing that. But just please don't be left holding the bag of Jordan Addison, because you are not going to be happy. You mentioned trade. Brandon Ayuk has officially requested a trade.
Yeah, we're there again. And, this is do we put this at a 15% chance of a trade? I'm not quite sure the number. I think there's going to be a number of teams interested, and we don't really know what's going on, internally in the organization, the sort of offers coming in that have sort of probably been out there for a while. I think there's going to be some mystery teams when it comes to Brandon Ayuk that are going to be kicking the tires. For a while, we heard Pittsburgh, we heard New England, we've heard the Washington Commanders. One thing I read interesting online is the Colts believe that they are one player away from a Super Bowl, one big impact player away from making a Super Bowl run. And it sort of would go with the MO of that organization to make a move and try to acquire a guy like Brandon Ayuk. So I think there's going to be mystery teams like the Indianapolis Colts that are going to be kicking the tires. But at the end of the day, I think San Francisco, more likely than not, just keeps him, and they deal with sort of a disgruntled employee, and then they probably move on from Brandon Ayuk. I don't know if this is going to be they franchise tag him like this coming off season, and it becomes a long standoff. I think more likely than not, this is his last year in San Francisco. He moves on after this year, but he's a huge part of their offense, Matt. And this is a team that we talked about this with Alan weeks ago. You have Kyle Shanahan, who thinks he's the smartest man in the room, and if any coach was going to kind of move on from a really, really important piece and think, hey, I can figure it out, and I can do it with Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing and Juwan Jennings in aggregate as a replacement for Ayuk, it's Shanahan. But at the end of the day, I think the organization knows right now we are the Super Bowl favorites in the Vegas odds to win it all. Brandon Ayuk is a huge part of that, a huge part of our offensive success. The guy was a first down machine this year, made that offense a lot more efficient, had tons of catches over 20 yards. He's their big play threat. I mean, there's so much that they rely on with Brandon Ayuk in that offense that I think at the end of the day, they're not going to move on from him. And it's sort of a stalemate at this point.
Yeah. Devontae Adams not going anywhere. Spoiler alert. And spoiler alert, Brandon Ayuk not going anywhere. Spoiler alert.
I would say there's a better chance Devontae Adams is a Jet than Brandon Ayuk's on another team this year.
Hey, that noise you can hear in the background, that's Kyle Shanahan laughing at this trade request. Laughing. This is what the fifth-year option's for. He took all the money from the first round, right? You make more money. You want to be a first-round pick. Did he want to go back in time and be T. Higgins and be a second-round pick? I don't think so. I think he wanted to be a first-round pick. I think he wanted to take that money, that extra money of being a first-round pick. The cost is, the trade-off is, you have to play another year. You have to play a fifth year. And just play. You have no leverage. Good for you. Wow. You want to trade. Cool. Go play football. There's nothing you could do. They're going to fine you into oblivion based on the new collective bargaining agreement. You can't hold out. So this is all theater. What do you think, Tyler?
You just look at what would a team have to do to actually for Brandon Ayuk to actually get traded, a team would have to look at him and be like, okay, yeah, the 49ers aren't going to pay him what he wants. It's rumored that he wants a Jalen Waddle type contract. So, so a pretty big number, like a really, really good, elite number 2 type contract, right? And the Niners aren't going to give that to him in terms of a long-term deal. And yeah, another team might be willing to do it, but they're going to have to give up really good draft capital to then they have to pay him and they have to give up the draft capital to go get him. What do the Niners want from would they do it for a first straight up? You'd probably think they might, but I don't think any other team wants to give up a first for a receiver going on his second contract. So I just don't see how the deal gets done. I know he's upset. Just because you're upset doesn't mean you're going to get moved. That's the reality.
I think if people were offering first for Brandon Ayuk, if somebody was offering a first, that deal would have gotten done over the draft weekend, where there was that rumor where we had a 18-hour period where we thought that Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel could get moved, and then San Francisco drafts Ricky Pearsall at the end of the first round. And Matt and Tyler, we were both together in Detroit for our draft coverage, and I remember having this conversation with Matt before on day 2 about how we might be reacting to a 49ers wide receiver trade. That didn't happen then. So, Tyler, I don't think the market is there for a first rounder. I think it would be more likely a second and a fourth, something like that, maybe in consecutive drafts. But I do think that we would be naive if we wouldn't think that Brandon Ayuk's not going to get an absolute monster of a deal from some NFL franchise. Talent-wise, it's there. He's proved it on a field. This is a guy who's been able to do it on 105 or so targets. And when you look at the contract that Calvin Ridley got this offseason, the sky's the limit for a potential. These guys like a Brandon Ayuk and even a T. Higgins, what they get on the market is going to be pretty staggering. The wide receiver position is being valued higher and higher every year. And you referenced the Jalen Waddle and the Nico Collins deals. Brandon Ayuk would get those in a heartbeat. I think those deals are going to be there right for him. The 3 years, $80 million type deals. Those deals are there for a guy like him, just like we saw with Waddle.
Here's why it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because there's no suitor that the 49ers would accept. The Patriots don't want to give up the draft picks, so they're not going to do it. The Steelers, they don't want to give up the draft picks. These are rebuilding teams. So the rebuilding teams are off the table. Okay, so now you're looking at playoff contenders. Well, San Francisco's a playoff contender. San Francisco's trying to win a championship. Like you talked about, they're the favorites to come out of the NFC, to go to the Super Bowl. The last thing they're going to do is dismantle their offense and lose a key piece. It's go time. That's why Kyle Shanahan's laughing. He's like, no, we drafted you for this exact season on your fifth-year option when we're the favorites heading into the playoffs. We've got a 28-year-old Christian McCaffrey. We've got some aging players on defense. This is our moment. This is our year. We'll talk next year about what your future is going to be. But we need you this year for a Super Bowl. There's one particular team that would be the perfect fit for Brandon Ayuk that has the draft picks to give up, that's well-positioned, and it's the last team the 49ers would trade with, and that's the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions absolutely need an outside split end to bookend and push coverage away from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Right? They have this is one, like the Lions, glaring hole on their roster, right? Is a true alpha prototype outside receiver that can run deep routes and basically has an all-purpose sort of a route inventory. They would love to have that. They don't have that, right? They've got this volume flanker who's going to put up like 160 targets, right? They have their Jerry Rice. They don't have their John Taylor on the other side. They have Jameson Williams, who is a total bust, Khalif Raymond, Donovan Peoples-Jones. None of it is good enough. The Lions are actually more favored to win the Super Bowl than even the Eagles. They are the second favorite to come out of the NFC. To win the Super Bowl, they're plus 1,200. Imagine a world where the Lions are plus 1,200 to win the Super Bowl. That's a great time to be alive. And this is what they've been building toward. They've been building this team to be in a position to go out and acquire a Brandon Ayuk right now, acquiring all these draft picks over time to go out and get a Brandon Ayuk right now. But again, Kyle Shanahan would be laughing. Brad Holmes calls, they're laughing. It's hilarious, as if we're going to trade Brandon Ayuk to our key competitor in the division. Because I'm looking down the board, the Eagles don't. Like the Cowboys, right? These are NFC teams. The Bengals brought back T. Higgins. We were looking at teams that need a receiver. The Ravens, right? So this is the dilemma. I'm either going to trade him to one of my top competitors to win a Super Bowl. Otherwise, the other teams aren't interested. They're rebuilding. It's not going to happen. Therefore, it can't happen.
I think what's interesting is Washington, Matt. Like, you're Detroit, but they're not going to trade him to Detroit. Like, that's what
I'm saying. That's the perfect fit, but it's also the fit that would never happen.
Washington is an interesting one, though, Matt, because Washington, they have the cap space. They are looking to make a move sort of like this. And there's the history between Jaden Daniels and Brandon Ayuk. They played together at Arizona State. Apparently, there's a lot of interest between the two of them playing together at some point. And I think that they're an organization that would potentially make an offer to San Francisco that might be more than any other team in the league. And San Francisco would view them as a non-threat for this year. So I think they're an interesting one sort of in this mix in our hypothetical trades that are not going to happen.
Well, that would be. Can you come up with a better one than that, Tyler? Because that is the best one I've heard.
Well, the other team is Pittsburgh, right? Like, Pittsburgh is the other team that's kind of been in the mix where, like, he went on that podcast and he was like, yeah, if I get traded, I'm like, I've never heard a player talk so openly about where they're going to go. Like, if they get traded while they're under contract for another team, he's like, yeah, if I get traded, I'm going to go to the Commanders. If I don't go there, I'll probably go to Pittsburgh. But like, Pittsburgh's like probably like the worst place he could go, right? You know, Arthur Smith offense, you know, you kind of already got a guy there in George Pickens. Like, I'm not excited if he goes to Pittsburgh.
That's pure smoke. He's not going there.
I don't think he is.
They don't need him. They have Pickens. They don't need him. They have what they need. They just drafted Roman Wilson. They have Calvin Austin stretching the field. They don't need him. They don't have to fill like a Khalif Raymond level hole. They don't. Luke McCaffrey, right? Yes. Okay. Washington. They absolutely need a receiver. They're short a receiver. Pittsburgh's really not.
I think that Pittsburgh views Brandon Ayuk as a elite player that if the price is right, they'll go get him. And at the end of the day, he would completely dust the two wide receivers you're referencing. I mean, Roman Wilson would become a nice role player. Brandon Ayuk, stylistically, with Pickens and Ayuk on the outside, that's a pretty scary proposition for what Pittsburgh's trying to do. again, like, Pickens and him are sort of superfluous to one another, but I think they could coexist just because they're both so good. Obviously, it's not an Arthur Smith MO, but I think Mike Tomlin might have a say into, the percentage we're going to be attempting to pass, Matt. If you had those two guys on the outside, I think he could reel Arthur Smith in a little bit.
Okay, so you think that the potential is there for Ayuk not to be traded to Pittsburgh or Washington, but to sign with them next year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be out there. I think, and again, like, next year is going to be so interesting. I think New England would be back in the mix next offseason, just based on, we look at the teams that have quarterbacks that they're looking to elevate the talent around them, potentially a Drake May in year 2, go get yourself a Brandon Ayuk. And I think Washington this coming offseason, Terry McLaurin's getting a little bit older. They didn't draft an outside wide receiver this draft that is somebody who's going to be commanding a high number of targets. So I think, like, immediately this offseason, Brandon Ayuk joining a Jaden Daniels heading into year 2 would sort of be like what Houston did going and trading for a Stephon Diggs to attach them to their year 2 quarterback and CJ Stroud. It's hey, we've got everything in place. We need a mercenary on the outside who can just step in and get 140 targets and be a wide receiver 1 for us. So I would put those two teams right on the front end. And then there's going to be teams that are just mystery teams. Like, we're fully expecting Cincinnati to move on from T. Higgins. Why wouldn't Cincinnati go ahead and kick the tires on a Brandon Ayuk? I mean, we don't know the way that the situation is going to roll out.
They don't make big free agent signings. That's not what Cincinnati does. They don't have the money to spend. They just have to dedicate all that money to Burrow, all that money to Chase. They're not going to do that at all. That's not in the range of outcomes. I think for Dynasty, Brandon Ayuk is a really interesting guy. Now, he's really expensive. It's not like, you can get, this is a great deal you're getting. The trade talks, his valuation's crashing. No, this is good news. Like, he's gone. We want him out of San Francisco, right? We want him going to a place where he can be the undisputed alpha. If he goes to New England with an ascending Drake May, that would be a bonanza. If he goes to Los Angeles with Justin Herbert to be his alpha, that would be a bonanza. There are some situations that he could land in next year that would be absolutely delicious for Dynasty. So somehow, some way, cooler heads prevail and he gets extended with San Francisco. Deebo Samuel's well post Apex, and he's the number 1 for Brock Purdy moving forward. That's also not bad. That's good, right? So most of the scenarios where you can see Brandon Ayuk landing next year are positive, with this glaring exception of Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh would be horrible. I mean, imagine, though, if Detroit did sign him. That would be great. That would just be so good. Like, we lost to you again in the playoffs, and we were burned by Brandon Ayuk. We're going to go ahead and sign him out away from you. That would be so good. I would love. That would be one of the greatest free agent signings ever if they did that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Matt. He's the guy that we're targeting in dynasty startups.
Yeah,
he's the guy that you could I actively try to trade for. All of the metrics are in Brandon Ayuk's favor. The guy was 7th in receiving yards last year in the NFL on and he was 15th in air yards. And then you look at the efficiency numbers: 3rd in yards per route run, 2nd in yards per target, 2nd in yards per reception. And then when you look at big plays, I referenced the catches over 20 yards. I believe he was right behind CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill last year. I think Brandon Ayuk was 3rd. And if you compare the raw targets between those 3 guys, it's not even close. I mean, Ayuk is just so hyper efficient as a receiver. So yeah, he's a guy we definitely want to acquire.
Now, there is a player that I'm worried about. It's not a receiver, and it has nothing to do with off-the-field concerns. It has everything to do with who he is on the field, and that he's essentially just misunderstood, mispriced, and I am not drafting him in seasonal leagues. and I'm sure as hell not drafting him in Dynasty. He, at cost, the most terrifying player has to be James Cook. No red flags on the profile off the field, nothing like that. It's just everything on the field that I'm seeing is terrifying.
So I agree with you from a dynasty perspective. The one thing that I would push back on you with, Matt, is this year. I think this year James Cook can return value. I worry a lot. So just looking at James Cook, James Cook last year finishes as an RB1. Last year he did it and he went, and the volume was there, Matt. Gets 237 rushing attempts, catches 44 passes. He was efficient running the football. He had 4.7 yards per carry. But when it comes to the long term with James Cook, that's where I kind of have a hold up. And it's just a fundamental dynasty valuation of James Cook right now is on Keep Trade Cut. He's RB13. So he's right around RB1 land. And I think it's a situational RB1 rather than a guy who's just grabbing it by the neck and will be there for a few more years. They added Ray Davis behind him this year, which was an interesting draft pick. Much bigger upgrade than the dusty, Latavius Murray and they signed Leonard Fournette. It didn't really do anything. But when I look at James Cook for this year specifically, when we look at the wide receiver room, we look at what Joe Brady did offensively. I think James Cook is going to catch 55, 60 passes. I think he's going to get 200 carries. And with the quality of the offense, I think he's going to return top 15 running back numbers this year. But I agree with you. I think long-term, he's a guy that if your league mates are really, really valuing him as something like a big-time dynasty asset long-term, then I'm willing to trade him away. I had this conversation with Heath Cummings on Dynasty Life last week, and I listed James Cook as a guy that I'm trading just fundamentally based on where he is in the dynasty market. Heath pushed back big. That's his guy this year.
Oh,
but
no,
I think,
really? I like Heath.
Yeah, he's sharp with it, but we got a little James Cook argument. But I said, this year, I think he's going to do well. And I'll say one thing, unlucky with the touchdowns. I know that, Tyler, you've got a stat for him you want to talk about, but if he gets 200 carries in that offense, even if he's not getting the goal line work, the touchdown numbers are going to go up. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last year. He had 4 receiving touchdowns. The rushing touchdown number is going to go up. So with that profile, if he gets 5 rushing touchdowns instead of 2, I mean, that further elevates him a little bit. And I think the receiving numbers are going to go up. Tyler, what's your James Cook stat that you're all stoked about?
He was the 4th leading rusher last year in the NFL, which is you think that guy would, be like, you said he had 2 rushing touchdowns. I would hope that he has more than that. He had 4 total carries inside the 5 last year, which for the 4th leading rusher in the NFL seemed really low to me. There also is an OC discrepancy as well. Obviously, they started off with Dorsey as the OC. He gets fired after that Denver Monday night just disaster that they somehow lose to Denver. And it's interesting because he didn't have a single game under Ken Dorsey over 15 carries last year. After Joe Brady took over, he had 5 carries or 5 games with over 15 plus carries. So there might be more where the OC, Joe Brady likes James Cook more. I could definitely see that. He definitely caught a lot of passes. There's that big Philly game where he went crazy. I think he's a fine player. I definitely don't like him long term. I think he could be fine for this year. And as a redraft player myself, Underdog Fantasy, that's where I make my living on this in this industry is I think the touchdowns. I don't know. It's just a shoo-in that he's going to score more touchdowns. I'm not really projecting that he's, I don't think he has a chance at 8 rushing touchdowns, 9 rushing touchdowns. He doesn't seem like that type of player. They didn't give the ball on the goal line for him for a reason last year. And Ray Davis is a guy who projects, a bigger back, a little shorter, but he's stout. He's a bigger back, really good goal line rusher from what I saw in college. So I don't like the goal line stuff for him. Maybe he's explosive when he gets there, but I'm not in on him from a, just scoring touchdown perspective. I think he could catch the ball, get some carries, but the touchdowns is the thing that scares me with James Cook.
I'll explain why I am fading James Cook into oblivion after this. Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it! It's worth noting from Brett Burner in the chat, top 5 cap spaces right now: New England, Detroit, Washington. These are the teams we talked about as potential landing spots for Brandon Ayuk. He mentioned Arizona. They don't need him because of this guy that they drafted. But the 5th team is interesting. We mentioned this team already, destined to lose Davante Adams. I could also see the Raiders coming in. That makes sense. I mean, what would be the best possible thing for just content would be they trade Davante Adams, but it's a 3-way trade. That the trade is the Jets, the Raiders, both in the AFC, with the 49ers. Right? So that would be kind of cool. And then maybe like Mike Williams somehow gets sent back to the 49ers, so they at least have someone they can play for on a 1-year deal this year to go for a Super Bowl. Everybody wins. If you go a 3-way trade with the Jets, the 49ers, and the Raiders, that would never happen. But that is another interesting scenario and another interesting possible landing spot for Ayuk in 2025. I am not drafting any James Cook because James Cook, in and of himself, first principles, is not a good running back. He had every opportunity, wide running lanes, second highest run blocking rating on Player Profiler last year. And what did he do with it? With 4.4 wheels, what did he do? He was outside the top 25 running backs in breakaway run rate, only 4.2%. 10 total runs of 15 yards or more. That was it. His juke rate was under 15%, which is almost unheard of. He was one of the lowest ranked running backs in the league. His yards created per touch was outside the top 40. It was below 3. These are all huge red flag numbers. Any juke rate under 15%, red flag. Any yards created under 3 per touch, red flag. Okay? And his yards per touch were high because he broke off a couple runs in the screen game. But it was such a mirage season for James Cook. It was the mirage season for any running back. He actually wasn't good last year. The Bills know this. They have access to Player Profiler. It's a public website, so they can see it. And then all the reasons I like Blake Corum, I also like Ray Davis. Because Blake Corum is a fully formed professional. He's ready to come in and carry a major workload right away. He's 23 and a half years old. Ray Davis is 24. Ray Davis is ready to come in and play now. He doesn't need, to get acclimated. He's not 21 years old. He's ready now to carry the mail inside the 5, to score all the touchdowns. I wouldn't be surprised James Cook has 0 touchdowns this year.
Oh, I would be surprised by that, but I do like Ray Davis a lot. Ray Davis also a really good receiver, Matt, so I think he's a like for like. We love when we see
Oh, yeah, by the way, 3 targets a game. That's all James Cook was able to command last year. 3 targets a game. This is supposed to be a satellite back. He is the fakest of fake running backs. Our comp on Player Profiler is the most perfect comp. We have a lot of perfect comps. Most of our comps are fucking perfect. They're shockingly perfect, and if you don't think they're perfect now, wait a year, they'll be perfect. James Cook's comp on PlayerProfiler.com, Andre Ellington. I mean, I couldn't draw it up better than that.
He's not getting that Ellington steam right now, for sure. But again, 237 carries in year 2, and I understand the competition behind him. was not ideal when you talk about like the age of those two backs. But I push back on the pure satellite back. I think that he's a different kind of running back. He's definitely, they don't want him to have 250 carries, so
he's worse than
rushing
that.
up on that.
That's the problem, Theo. What I'm telling you is he's worse than a traditional satellite back. He's the worst of all worlds. Right? He is like a smaller Tevin Coleman. Right? He's an upright runner who is, has a 27.8 BMI, 10th percentile. He's also an injury risk that no one talks about. Guys with that BMI that take that kind of workload, most of the time get hurt. Whether they have an injury history or not, it's just physics. The physics of a player that size and the probability of getting into that many collisions. So on every level, whether he gets hurt, whether the team is just frustrated by his inefficiency and the fact that he gets the bare minimum on every given carry, and we haven't even talked about the fumbles, the perception that why do you think they're not giving him the ball inside the 5? Because it's too risky. Because he puts the ball on the ground. That's his reputation. This top 40 ADP, like in startups, he's going like, I saw him go like pick 39, pick 38. The number of players that are available at that pick in a startup where he's going, I always shiver when I see it because it's a competitor that's drafting him. This is a team I want to go beat. And even then I have empathy for these people because I'm like, you just lit a pick on fire with James Cook.
I don't think it's quite lit a pick on fire for this year, Matt. But I agree with you. It's the competition for him in startups right now, like the guys right around him, you can go older, or you can go with one of these younger players a lot later. Like I can get Jonathan Brooks in a similar range. I can get Trey Benson later.
Yeah.
Those guys are right there. So like, and again, like when you're using that sort of draft pick in a dynasty startup, a lot of times we're going to pivot towards the wide receiver spot anyway, because like the opportunity cost for you taking a James Cook in that range is you're passing up on a wide receiver with like that long-term stability. And I can get a running back a little bit later that maybe has as good of a 2-year bet as Cook for cheaper. So I think I'm more of an opportunity cost argument than thinking he just is terrible argument.
He better have a bell cow profile. If I'm going to take a guy in the top 40 of a dynasty startup, guy better have a bell cow profile. And James Cook does not have that. No one would dispute that. No one's like, yeah, this guy's a bell cow. No, he's not. No, it's fake. It's a fake. That carry total was fake. Like I hear that, Rachaad White, that he's never going to have a top 5 carry total again. And I'm like, oh, Rachaad White's 218 pounds. Rachaad White proved that he is a bell cow in the league, and he will be that for the next few years. It's the exact opposite, where the advanced metrics show that Rachaad White is well positioned to be a bell cow moving forward, not James Cook. Now, the theme of this show is actually rookies, in that we're getting into August and rookie fever finally starting to subside, usually in most seasons. But what I've found so far is that there are precious few rookies who are starting to have the steam let out, and they're steady. The enthusiasm is steadier with this rookie class than any rookie class I can remember. There are a few that I think where the ADPs are starting to come down in seasonal leagues and in best ball leagues. You're starting to see the ADPs come down. Generally, across the board, they're pretty steady. A guy that I was hoping for an opportunity to draft at this point, and it's just not happening. But I think that he was a value all along anyway. So I'm not getting a dip. I'm not getting the benefit of a dip, but I like the ADP anyway, so I'm going to keep drafting him. And that's Brock Bowers. What do you think, Theo?
Absolutely. I mean, I love Brock Bowers. I discussed this with Tyler on his show, Best Ball Barbecue, yesterday. But I've been a huge Bowers guy for a long time, and I think that the situation is there for him to deliver this year. And Matt, it's sort of we're betting on the profile of Bowers. Take a step back. There's change at the running back position. Like, we like Zamir White, but I don't think Zamir White is going to get anywhere near what we saw Josh Jacobs get stylistically. I think there's some people out there. I think we've got to pump the brakes on that one. Then you look at the competition. Jakobi Meyers played well last year. Devontae Adams is a target machine. But when it comes to Brock Bowers, all we need to get is close to 100 targets at the tight end position, and you're on easy street. That's just a number where there's few tight ends in the NFL that are going to hit that mark this year. And I think Bowers has as good a shot as any when you get past like the top 6 tight ends to receive a really strong target total. They're going to move him around the offense. They're going to play him in several spots. I think they're going to run 12 personnel with him and Michael Mayer to protect him, where Mayer can block and Bowers can be a little bit more of a move guy. I think there's opportunities for Bowers to play some slot, and there's opportunities for Bowers to play some outside receiver. So I really think that they're giving him manufactured touches on the ground. That's something that has been reported at OTAs, that they're going to use him like Georgia did on some manufactured runs here and there. So I think Bowers, there's a reason that they took him in the first round, a year after selecting a tight end in the second round. I think they viewed the talent profile as something that was so good that they couldn't pass it up. And when we're looking at tight ends, we want to identify guys who can either be top 2 targets on their team. I think he checks that box. With all respect to Jakobi Meyers, I think we could bet on Bowers out-targeting him. There's scenarios where he out-targets Meyers. And we want to look at tight ends with a potentially high touchdown total. And Brock Bowers is that as well. He's explosive. His first year at Georgia, when he was 18 years old, the guy had double-digit touchdowns in the SEC. He's been a fast riser everywhere he's gone. And there's not a whole lot to dislike about this profile. And, Matt, we also have the recency bias. We already saw a tight end finish as tight end 1 overall last year in his rookie season as Sam Laporta. And a few years back, we saw Kyle Pitts go over 1,000 receiving yards. We saw Dalton Kincaid post a top 5 rookie receptions all time at the tight end position last year. So tight ends have been the old adage that young tight ends can't perform well is sort of slowly tricking out the window.
Yeah, I really like Bowers, man. I can't stop drafting him right now. He just feels like, you kind of mentioned it, where you mentioned the 12 personnel. I kind of look at it more as like big 11, where it's like Michael Mayer is like the inline tight end, and they just let Bowers be the slot. Because who do you want to take off the field? Do you want to take out Michael Mayer off the field, or do you want to keep Michael Gallup on the field? Like I would want Mayer, Bowers rather than Bowers and Gallup. That's the way I would look at it. So I think he's going to be, they're going to move him around like Kyle Pitts, like you mentioned before. Like Kyle Pitts got moved around a ton his rookie year. We saw what that looked like, and I think he has a similar season to that. And if we're just looking at it from a talent perspective, like right now, like I think he can deliver this year. In redraft, he goes around like David Njoku and Jake Ferguson, and he's like, if we're just looking at talent, we're looking at the profile. How many more tight ends that go above him like are actually more talented than him? Like and this might be a hot take, but is Sam Laporta a more talented tight end than Brock Bowers? I don't think so. I think Brock Bowers as a talent is more talented. The situation is why you love Sam Laporta so much. But all those tight ends that are going above him right now, they're all have one thing in common, in that they're in good offense. Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, all those guys, they're in really good offenses. So I like Bowers from a talent perspective, what it shapes out to be. Like how, I think he can finish as that, that number 2 target earner on his team. I like Bowers. I like him in Dynasty. I like him in redraft. I like Bowers everywhere. This is like one thing that I mentioned in the tweet yesterday. I said, me and Theo, we're gonna talk up. I listed it as Brock Bowers propaganda, and that's what I feel like I'm doing right now. I love Brock Bowers.
And I'm Matt, never am I in on a rookie tight end like this, because typically there's all this hype. You look at the ADPs. There's a cluster in startups of Bowers, Kincaid, Pitts, and Kelsey all going at the same pick. And in our rankings, it's clear we have Laporta and Bowers. So that's the strategic sort of advantage that we're offering today is take Bowers. Bowers should be the tight end too. Spoiler. And you can go to playerprofiler.com. You can check out our dynasty rankings there, and you can see exactly who we have at 3, who we have at 4, who we have at 5. You might be interested to see where we have Kelce compared to where he's taken in startups. We're quite divergent on Travis Kelce. You got to check out the rankings to see. And the big tactic is just to not draft McBride. McBride goes 10 picks before Bowers. And right, what? No. So there aren't very many services that have Bowers at tight end 2. We do. And take the value, man. Take the value. I mean, he's going at, you know who he has a similar ADP to. He's going after James Cook. Trust me. Brock Bowers is going to have like 5 times the number of fantasy points in his career as James Cook.
One thing that I think is interesting, Matt, is just from a dynasty perspective, you talked about Davante Adams. Davante Adams had 3 straight years of 169 or more targets. We think that this might be, one way or another, whether he's traded or not, the last year for Davante Adams in Vegas. Then we get into the Brock Bowers heading into year 2 narrative. Brock Bowers heading into year 2 as the number 1 receiver on the Las Vegas Raiders will be a guy that we're going to project realistically for 135 plus targets and maybe 140. He could cross into that Evan Engram type range, the peak Darren Waller type range, dare I say it, the Travis Kelce type range of targets as the number 1 target on that team.
He's not that far from Sam Laporta in our rankings.
No,
he's
is
very within
close.
striking distance. If Sam Laporta disappoints this year and Brock Bowers starts hot, they're going to come right together. They're going to converge. Just like Tyler said, the talent's the same.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, Matt, us talking, mid-season, like at like 11 o'clock at night one night about Sam Laporta when it was like the ascendance, and we're talking about it like right after Monday Night Football. And a lot of times Matt and I will talk about dynasty rankings on like a Tuesday morning, and we had to talk late that night just because it was Laporta balling. You could just see a moment like that this year where, despite Player Profiler being extremely aggressive in our Brock Bowers rating, like there's a chance that in the overall dynasty rankings we could be too low. Like there's a chance with Laporta as well, Tyler. To like your argument with Laporta, like I think from a pure talent situation, there's an argument to be had. Like Laporta showed it on the field last year, the explosiveness, and Laporta also getting 120 targets with that sort of target competition in his first year is very telling. It would be one thing if Laporta would have had 95 targets and just went insane on the touchdown receptions, and that sort of elevated him. But hitting that 120 target mark as a tight end is massive. But Matt, you look at Brock Bowers from a forward-thinking perspective. Like, I've been a huge Dalton Kincaid guy. I have Bowers ahead of Kincaid in Dynasty, but I have Kincaid very highly ranked as we do a Player Profiler. Like, Dalton Kincaid is now a second-round pick in FFPC main events, FFPC 350s. Right there with Laporta, right there with McBride, Kelce. They're all sort of in this second-round cluster. A year from now, Bowers is going to be a top 25 pick in FFPC drafts in the high money ones. It's just the way the way this thing is headed with a player of his talent level.
Is there another guy like Bowers for you, Tyler, you, Theo? I was hoping for a little extra ADP relief to get even more Bowers in August. It's not going to happen. Is there someone that you were looking for some ADP relief on, and you're like, I guess it's not going to happen?
Well, you've seen a little bit of ADP relief, taken on a lower level for rookie tight ends. We saw the steam right after the NFL draft with Ben Sinnott. Now you're starting to see a little bit of there's the argument where some of the beat reporters are saying that they're going to line him up at multiple positions. And you've got like the Ben Sinnott faders saying that this is a situation where he's a halfback, he's a fullback. To me, they want to get Ben Sinnott in advantageous situations on the offense. And I think it's more of a plus that he's going to get on the field early. But he does have that speed bump with Zach Ertz for maybe the first half of the year. So you do have a little bit of a relief with Ben Sinnott in terms of like he's cheaper than what you would have had to pay for him right after the NFL draft. And in Dynasty startups, that's reflected. In Dynasty startups, right after the NFL draft, like right around rookie draft season in FFPC, you were seeing Ben Sinnott as like tight end 10. Now he's down to more like the tight end 14, tight end 15. And I think long term, he's going to be a very valuable asset for us attached to Jaden Daniels, a guy who I know you're extremely high on, Matt. And I think organizationally, Ben Sinnott's a guy who's going to do very well. But you do have a little bit of a window with him at the tight end position.
How about you, Tyler?
In terms of just tight ends or overall?
Overall, any player, any rookie where you're like, man, I can't wait to draft this guy in August because I think that the steam will come out of him a little bit, and it's not happening.
The one for me, there's one rookie receiver that I just cannot seem to like draft right now, given where he's kind of going around. It's Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
There's something about Ladd McConkey going right next to, I tweeted about this, was like, he goes, I see him consistently going drafts over Rome Odunze. And just for me, like Ladd McConkey was a second-round pick. Rome Odunze was the 9th overall pick. From that, you just look at the talent like profiles alone. I cannot seem to get myself to draft McConkey. I'll do it now and again, but right now, I'm really hoping this team. I hope we get like I'm sure you would enjoy like a really nice Quentin Johnson puff piece where he put last year behind him. He's ready to go, like something like that. I would love to get something like that to get my boy Ladd McConkey to come down the board a little bit.
Now you mean in the best ball streets for Ladd?
Best ball or Dynasty, either one.
Yeah.
Either one.
Dynasty, like, and I'll say that's the redraft and best ball argument, like where Odunze is going below several receivers drafted well behind him in the NFL draft in the best ball and redraft streets. It could be like this could be a situation where it's a little bit closer to Garrett Wilson rookie year, where Garrett Wilson gets pushed down because Elijah Moore, who a lot of us were, very high on heading into year 2, but there was not enough factoring in like Garrett Wilson is just much better than him. Elijah Moore flashes as a rookie. Garrett Wilson gets put into the equation. Garrett Wilson's a top 10 NFL pick. Garrett Wilson gets pushed down. You're getting him at like wide receiver 5 land in redraft and in best ball. And then he finishes as a borderline, like right around wide receiver 24. He's offensive rookie of the year. Like that scenario's there with Rome Odunze, because I think Rome Odunze is the kind of guy where talent wise, he could just crush it in the second half of the season. Obviously there's some speed bumps with the target competition, but the last thing we want to do is fade potentially elite talents too much because of target competition. Time in, time again, the real alphas win over. It just sometimes takes a little while. Matt, you can remember A.J. Brown, rookie year, DK Metcalf, rookie year. I mean, we can go down the list. There's so many of these guys that were just second half of the year. You're like, oh, this guy's a second-round pick in redraft next year. So I think that's definitely we still want to keep drafting Rome Odunze whenever we can, despite knowing that the first month might be a little choppy for us.
I love Rome Odunze, man. Rome Odunze goes to another team. He's being drafted a lot higher in all formats. I definitely think that makes him a little bit more of a value in Dynasty, that where he goes in seasonal leagues, where he goes on Underdog, it can't not affect his Dynasty startup ADP. It can't not affect his Dynasty trade value. So I think there's a little bit of a window here with Rome Odunze, but how many injuries has Keenan Allen had in his career? He's had a punctured spleen, a ruptured spleen, hamstring injuries, calf injuries, hip injuries, shoulder injuries. DJ Moore has been a picture of health, thank God. So that's probably we're probably going to see another 17 games played for DJ Moore, just a metronome of a player. But Keenan Allen, man, Keenan Allen's like he's on the Adam Thielen career path. Like we're not going to be thinking about Keenan Allen very soon. Maybe it's 6 weeks in that Keenan Allen has picked up an injury, or Keenan Allen's just not quite the player he was. Keenan Allen came into the NFL running a 4.7. What does he run now? Tyler, what do you think Keenan Allen runs at this point?
We'll give him a 4.85, 4.49.
Guys running a 4.85, right? So, yeah, that's why I happen to have more Odunze than any of the other rookie wide receivers for that reason. I'm just smashing that every time. Much as I love Bowers, I'm not taking him over fucking Odunze, man. Odunze is the truth, and he has Caleb Williams, and eventually there's going to be a big boom week, whatever week it is. It could just be a single game injury that Keenan Allen or DJ Moore picks up, and then boom, 200-yard game for Rome Odunze, or okay, not a 200-yard game, but let's say 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then everyone's like, wait a second, if I extrapolate this out with Caleb Williams, oh my God, in Dynasty, this is crazy. They haven't seen it yet. That's why the valuation on Odunze, it's in a perfect spot. We don't need it to go down. We don't need it. There's been no boiling, so it doesn't have to go to a simmer. A couple guys, though, I think are coming down. Drake May, because we're not sure when Drake May is going to start. I think there was an assumption Drake May starts right away. Now, the word out of New England is there's going to be weeks. He's going to sit. There's no receivers there. I think there's been a realization that Drake May is probably not going to have a big 2024 season. I think that's been affecting his ADP in all formats. So what are you all seeing with the Drake May steam being let out of the pot?
I think when you get to Underdog, he's been more and more of a guy that you can get as a QB3. And you talk about like the best ball market influencing, what we see in the dynasty streets. Jaden Daniels is a locked in QB1, and Caleb Williams might as well be. You're going to have to use top 14 QB ADP to get Caleb Williams. So there's a big disconnect between those two and Drake May. There already was sort of a big teardrop, Matt, after we saw our rookie drafts from those guys down to Drake May. But with Drake May, I think it's an opportunity to buy in Dynasty at a reduced cost, where it costs you maybe a little bit less than what you would have had to pay during rookie draft season. And I think sometimes in Superflex drafts, in Superflex rookie drafts, you ran into I sort of have to take him in this range argument, where I'm sitting there at like the 106, Drake May is still available to me. I'm going to take him, but I'm going to take him not too excited about it. You're going to run into managers like that in Dynasty. So I don't think that New England's in a massive hurry to get him on the field. That being said, I think I would give it like a month before we see Drake May, and I think some people think it might be half a year. Some people think it might be more than that. But I do think we'll see him. I think we'll see him 6 weeks into the year. So for me, I think it's a little bit of a disconnect in the Dynasty marketplace with when does he get on the field? What does he give me in his rookie year? And then you also have the fact that we don't know anything about the wide receiver room. Like we do. We have a couple guys that we like at Player Profiler, but it's still a very ambiguous situation with who gets targets, who's the guy that they're going to lean on in that offense. So people don't want to draft Patriots. People are worried about Drake May. It's sort of a perfect storm for if you want to go trade for some. Because I think once he gets on an NFL field as a starter, he's going to be a guy that we say, oh, this is going to be a helpful player for fantasy because he's going to be very effective as a runner. A lot more effective than some people think. And Drake May is a guy where when he has that built-in rushing floor, I think that he's the kind of guy that could go up in the dynasty ranks this year just based on that. Big arm plus running ability. It's a simple game sometimes.
It sounds like, generally speaking, you believe that this rookie class is underrated, and you've been drafting aggressively all year in all formats, rookies, and any lowering of ADPs for this rookie class, you're going to view largely as a buying opportunity.
Yeah, I think that we've been bullish on this rookie class at Player Profiler for a while. I think that the steam with the guys at the top, it's just not going to stop. Like anybody thinking, I'm going to get some Marvin Harrison Jr. shares late because he's going to drop to like a low-end second-round pick in best ball, like that's gone. Like the high-end guys have a tremendous amount of steam. But I think, Matt, when we get down to it, we saw how impactful last year's rookie class was. I think that this rookie class is going to be just as impactful, if not more. And I think for me, I think that's a great way of classifying it. I look at it as potential opportunities for entry points in Dynasty and potential opportunities to draft these guys in redraft. And we also have the chance that an injury is going to propel one of these rookie wide receivers way up. Like you talk about like the Ricky Pearsall, Jermaine Burton, that tier of wide receivers, there's still some juice there, Tyler, that those guys could move up very, very quickly. So I think it's a class we want to bet on for sure. And if you look at just sort of the way these rookies rise, Matt, if you look at the underdog marketplace right now and just the rankings, and you go down the list, and Tyler, you could attest to this, just how impactful the second-year players are in redraft and in best ball. Second-year players are all there. I think that there's more, and this is, don't quote me on this one, I would have to do the math, but I would be actually surprised if we didn't see, I believe we have more second-year players in the first 3 rounds on underdog than we do any other class right now in the NFL. And I think this class is going to be headed in that direction too. I think it's a youth movement in the league.
Well, this is my position. My position has been for many years that you draft rookies in Dynasty. It's crazy, right? But actually in Dynasty, oftentimes rookies are undervalued, especially people that come into the Dynasty. If you're in a startup with some newbies, some of these startups got 2 or 3 managers that are new to Dynasty, and they just don't quite realize the power of youth, not only in the valuation of players, but just in the trade market when they're going to make a trade and how impactful it is. It takes years to get acclimated to how much youth matters in Dynasty. So more often than not, all else equal, I'm drafting a rookie in Dynasty. All else equal, in best ball and seasonal leagues, I'm drafting a sophomore. That's all I've been talking about for weeks. It's how I want all these sophomore running backs. Give me Zamir White. Give me Roshan Johnson. Give me Kendre Miller. Give me Zach Charbonnet. Give me all these guys. Tajay Spears, I want them all. Give me them all. All of them. Give me. That's what I want. So there is a rookie, though, that I think will crater that hasn't cratered yet, because the news will eventually come out that he's going to start the year on the inactive list. And that's Jonathan Brooks. So just wait. Just wait. If you're in a seasonal league and you're drafting Jonathan Brooks at ADP right now, I think you're insane. I think it's crazy. And I'm in the Scott Fish Bowl right now. That's a seasonal league format. I'm going 0 RB. I drafted Trey Benson as my second running back. And I'm going right back to the running back position. Who do you think I'm going to draft next? Who do you think I'm going to draft? If I'm thinking, okay, it's going to take a few weeks for Trey Benson to start to be startable, it could take half the year. Who knows? Could be the whole year. It could be a bust. We don't know what's going to happen, right? But I do know that if I need production in the month of September at the running back position, I'm going to go out and draft Chuba Hubbard. That's the guy I'm drafting, because I'm going to layer in Chuba with Benson, because I know that Chuba is going to trail off. Benson's going to come in. That's, and I don't have to handcuff. They could both hit in a big way, and I don't have to bet against myself. It's kind of like it's a sleight of hand handcuff move of a Hubbard with a Benson. Of course, you're drafting Benson first, because very late. Seems to be a very late realization that Jonathan Brooks had a late season ACL tear. And we haven't gotten to that part of camp where teams have decided, based on the medical checks and how these players are feeling and all these things, like, okay, we need to realize this is not going to happen. Like, he's not going to be on the field week 1. It usually takes once you get into August, these teams start to come to Jesus on these ACL tears, and it's going to happen with Jonathan Brooks.
I think it's already. See, I would take the argument that the injury trepidation is already baked into the price with him, Matt. Like, I think that Brooks going in the 6th and 7th round in FFPC and NFFC drafts on underdog, he's very much an RB2. We know that he might miss 3-4 games, but I push back on he's going to miss the season. He's going to miss half a year.
He's not going to miss the season, but he's going to start the year on the pup.
I don't know.
I don't believe that's baked in. You think that's baked in? He's a rookie running back on a bad team.
On a bad team that is going to use him a ton because he's going to be a very important piece to the puzzle as soon as he steps on the field.
Not in year one, they're not.
We will see.
Not
but I do agree.
Not coming off a late season ACL tear where they have Chuba Hubbard, a 2,000-yard college running back who vastly exceeded expectations last year, who has size, who has explosiveness, who went out and caught 40 passes last year. Chuba Hubbard had 44 targets. That was more than James Cook.
And this new coaching staff takes Jonathan Brooks in the second round, despite it. And despite Jonathan Brooks would have been a first-round pick if there was no injury. I think that this team views him as a guy that is going to be the offensive focal point and protect Bryce Young. And I think the other thing is, Matt, the one thing you said on Chuba Hubbard.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Yeah, he did not have more targets than James Cook. That he had 10 less targets than James Cook. For accuracy purposes, this is the most accurate show in the world. We are going to have corrections in real time. I got ahead of myself. I got excited. I apologies to James Cook. No, you did in a lead back role for the entire season, James Cook. Yes, you did out target Chuba Hubbard, who came in at the last minute to supplant Miles Sanders for the Carolina Panthers. Yes, you did have more targets than him, barely.
But I have been drafting Chuba on any team that I draft Brooks in redraft because the price point is there where I can draft Jonathan Brooks when he's available in the 7th, and then I can follow it up with Chuba in like the 14th. And I don't mind doing that because Matt, if it's a 1 month thing of Chuba, then I protected myself. But I think the argument with Brooks is second half of the year, I think he's going to be really, really effective. The money weeks of fantasy football season, I think he's going to be very, very effective. And I think he's going to catch more passes than some people think.
On my end, if you're looking for support here, Matt, I can't give it to you. I'm a Dave Canales groupie. I freaking love that guy. I think he's like, you look
Matt
at what he did.
This is how they do it, everybody. Everybody in the chat knows. They know it's like incoming coach worship. That's the only way they're going to get you, Podfather.
Hey, he did wonders for your boy Rachaad White last year.
It's like I have that. If this was a war, if this was if we were having battle lines drawn, you guys would be getting cut to pieces because you're trying to hit me on the coach flank, and I have defenses for days. There's barbed wire, machine guns, outposts. You got archers. Every era of warfare is covered. You're never gonna get me on the coach flank, guys.
Take the coach argument out of it, Tyler. That's a pet peeve for Matt. How about Jonathan Brooks is just really good?
I think he's going to be a great player in 2025. I really do.
I'm going to stay to my guns here. I think the coach thing is 100% viable. I will stand by my guns because you look at what this guy did with he is solely responsible for making pretty historically mid quarterbacks a ton of freaking money. You got Geno Smith, who did nothing in his career. He turns his career around. Then he goes to Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield. We were talking about the Buccaneers last year as a Caleb Williams team. That was a legit thing that was happening over the course of the summer. And and then he turns them in. Not only do they go to the playoffs in a bad division, but they beat the Eagles. They lose a pretty close game to the Lions in the playoffs. And then now he makes Baker Mayfield all that money. He made Geno Smith a ton of money. Now he's in Carolina, where Rachaad White was top 5 in carries last year. And if the injury part of it with Jonathan Brooks, it's probably not going to happen for him right away. But if in terms of best ball and what the late season part of that could be, that's why you draft Jonathan Brooks where you draft him, because the late season part of that could be something that's league winning type stuff.
How many reps is he going to get in camp and in preseason? How many full speed reps is he going to get acclimated to the league? Oh, that's right. Oh.
We will see.
Oh, that's right. Zero. He is going to be very, very behind. You think it's hard enough to be a young rookie? He's one of these young rookies. Even Bijan Robinson, he got all the touches he wanted in preseason and training camp to get ready, and they still were like, we're going to go ahead and feed Tyler Algier here because this guy's young, and this guy, we want to make sure we develop him and don't burn him up in year one. That's with perfectly healthy ACLs.
I will say, though, I think Dave Canales is a much more competent coach than Arthur Smith, maybe. And you're talking to a Falcons fan here, so I mean, I'm biased here, right? I'm biased. He burned.
That's not even competence. I don't think that's. You think that's competence? I think that's smart. I think that's a wise, rational move. That's what you should be doing. That's what you should be. Chuba Hubbard is a very good running back. He is underrated. As overrated as James Cook is, Chuba Hubbard's underrated, right?
No doubt. I like Chuba Hubbard. I just think, again, it's more the late season part for me. I think Jonathan Brooks could be awesome down the stretch this year. I'm not necessarily drafting him to be. And I think if he comes in on a fully healthy ACL, where do we think he's being taken in redraft in these startups? I think he goes a lot higher. So I think
Chuba Hubbard had a top 30 target share and was top 5 in catch rate. If anything, he's going to be the satellite back. He's going to be the lightning to Jonathan Brooks' thunder when Jonathan Brooks is activated from the pop.
I think that Jonathan Brooks, the idea of Jonathan Brooks is using him like a Rachaad White, where he doesn't leave the field, where they're going to use him as a receiver. And I think Chuba Hubbard can be a change of pace guy and a direct handcuff. I think that's the way we're going. But hey, if you get your 3 starts out of Chuba to start out the season, Matt, Trey Benson will take over by week 4 and you'll be all right.
That's the plan. In a 4-game stretch, near the end of last season, Chuba Hubbard posted 15 red zone carries in 4 games. Chuba Hubbard is an underrated asset in all formats. Can we say that? You won't even say that, will you? He has Dave Canales too. You know Chuba Hubbard has Dave Canales, Tyler? Or does it not count? It's only the rookie running back that you're hyping up. That then the coach matters.
If Jonathan Brooks was a 4th round pick, I'd be a lot more scared. They went out and they traded up to get this guy. They wanted this guy on the team. Like, again, this isn't like as much as I love Ray Davis, this isn't a Ray Davis situation. This is a Jonathan Brooks, the number 1 running back in the class. We're going to use this guy like we use Rachaad White.
You're right. You're right. They gave Jonathan Brooks draft capital that is almost as valuable, but not quite as the draft capital that Ronald Jones got. You're right.
Come on.
Ronald Jones
don't put Rojo out here.
No. There's been a lot of great second-round picks. There's very talented second-round picks that had knee injuries that took time, or that came in with perfectly fine knees and were not used, like Zach Charbonnet last year, second-round pick, or that had off-the-field issues. Not saying that anyway, but there's no guarantee just because you were a second-round pick that you're going to be fed right away. If you're a top 5, if you're Saquon Barkley, if you're Bijan Robinson, then I thought Bijan being a top 10 pick, that would guarantee he gets a workload that would be, bell cow level. That didn't even guarantee him that. He came in with healthy knees, top 10 capital, and Tyler Algier is getting the primary back workload as a runner. Made no sense, but that's what happened. And this was with a full off-season participation from Bijan Robinson. We'll see. We'll see on this. But there are certainly rookies that have off-season hype, especially post-draft, once their landing spot is known, and then it starts to leak away. It does happen. It does. I think with Jonathan Brooks, as we get into August, you are going to see it happen more. I don't think it's fully baked in. I reject that notion altogether. At running back, I also think Kamani Vidal. Kamani Vidal has had a shockingly muted offseason. I'm hearing nothing about him, and that worries me. For a 6th-round pick, I am losing faith in Kamani Vidal's ability to produce this year, and I'm thinking he's going to be more of a dynasty taxi squad guy that you got him in the 4th round anyway. We right after the draft, we were like, get this guy in the 4th round every time. and everyone was getting him in the 4th round. And then he gets steamed to the 3rd round, and then at that point, I was like, okay. Now, I'm not necessarily grabbing all of Vidal, right? Vidal Sassoon. It could be by the end of the summer that he's back in the 4th round in startups, in rookie drafts.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of steam in like April, early May with Vidal. That's certainly come down. But
just to be clear, Theo, there was not steam in April and there was not steam in early May. The steam on Vidal happened in the month of June. That is when he moved up. It took a while. We were talking about, you, me, and Alan were talking about Vidal Sassoon as a value in rookie drafts for weeks after the draft. Something happened. I don't know, some analysts somewhere finally figured out that he has a lot of potential, and you started seeing the move in late May. I think you're going to see the parabola where he goes up and then he goes down. We've seen this so many times, this rookie parabola.
We saw some, like, I think Vidal is definitely a league specific and analyst specific type guy. We saw in, like, there was I remember I wrote an article about this at Player Profiler, where there was a $5,000 entry fee FFPC Dynasty League single QB, and Vidal went off the board at like the 202. So there's certain managers betting on him at an extremely high level in some very, very high stakes drafts.
I like him. I like him. I celebrated in the draft house. You guys remember when they drafted Vidal? I was like, oh my God, my guy. Now I'm getting, I don't like how much some people like him, and I'm starting to get like Dwayne McBride vibes.
Tyler, do you know what Vidal Sassoon is a reference to? It's a very dated reference, an incredible one by the Podfather. But I'm curious for some of the younger one. So Matt, explain. Vidal Sassoon was a big shampoo brand, probably 1990s, Matt, 1990s. And I think it's fallen down a little bit in the pecking order. Any ladies in the chat, please tell us if you're still purchasing Vidal Sassoon.
Yes,
but Matt constantly says Vidal Sassoon,
yes.
And I think like 10% of people get it.
I don't get it.
There are some references that I know open-eyed. I walk in knowing they're dated. Like, this is dated. This is very dated. I'm about to show my age. I had no idea that Vidal Sassoon wasn't a thing. Like that, you go into a shower and your wife has Vidal Sassoon. I don't know. I guess my wife doesn't use it, but I didn't know that it was not a thing anymore.
Somebody go to CVS and take a shot at the shelf and see if we can't find it.
I'm going to CVS today, and I'm going to see if I can find a Vidal Sassoon. I'm going to bring it. I'm going to show you proof of life. Vidal Sassoon, not as dated as you might think. But people in the chat are telling me that that Vidal is better than McBride.
Yes, he's better than Dwayne McBride.
But you guys remember, this is the thing, that this is what gives me a headache. I happen to remember very clearly how good many analysts, especially the film guys, thought Dwayne McBride was. They really liked him.
McBride was a big explosive yards per carry guy, and it was also a Ty Chandler hadn't gotten on an NFL field hardly at all, and we had an Alexander Madison.
Can you not
Ty
do this,
Chandler,
Theo? Can you not give these people the benefit of the doubt? We are trying to hold these people accountable. Let's do it. You don't need. These are nameless, faceless analysts. We're not even calling anybody out, but people know who we're talking about, and we are setting the record straight, and we are talking shit. Let's talk shit. We didn't even give a name, and you're giving these people off ramps and excuses.
Just
Enough.
Adding context.
This is the most accurate show in the world, so I appreciate you giving the context. Thank you. Final guy. And this I have to celebrate. I'm noticing an ADP drop in all formats, and I'm very happy. And no, it's not Ricky Pearsall, because Ricky Pearsall is on the physically unable to play list. All right, so I saw that. You have to understand. I was when I see him placed on the non-football injury list, the NFI list, I feel bad for Pearsall. I want him to do well, but I was not drafting Ricky fucking Pearsall. And I remember telling everybody, do not draft him. Do not draft him. Do not draft him in rookie drafts. You can trade for him later if you want, but you can wait and let someone drop him or taxi squad him, whatever it is. You want to take there's going to be plenty of chances for you to get Ricky Pearsall. Just don't do it in rookie drafts. Okay? And it was rookie Pearsall and Keon Coleman. And then I crack open my ADP tab on every player profile or player page, and who's dropping in all formats? It's Ricky Pearsall and it's Keon Coleman.
I'm going to defend Keon Coleman for a minute here because everyone's getting steam, right? Because like the fall on Keon Coleman is because the GM and the coach aren't saying like the most like outstanding things about him, which is like not in the for any NFL player.
That's surprising.
It's like you see like you got Ladd McConkey doing that freaking cone drill that everyone loves to see. It's like, oh my God, look at this route that Ladd McConkey ran.
Because Ladd McConkey was the one guy we were hyping in the early second round. You want to take a guy that was drafted in the early second round of the NFL draft in your rookie draft? Well, it should be Ladd McConkey. I remember us saying that was the list. Ladd McConkey was the list. And now I'm not surprised. Keon Coleman, you don't realize in the last week, Keon Coleman's down almost a full round on Underdog. Do you realize that?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is in free fall. He needs a parachute.
Well, I think with Coleman, I think it is going to settle out. But them getting actually to a training camp is going to be good for Coleman because Matt, you know this, Tyler, you know this. All the guys he's the kind of guy that's going to flash in terms of like the clips. People are going to say, "Whoa, that's Keon Coleman." The team is not giving him any sort of vibe, any sort of steam. You get a lot of these guys where the team really talks him up, the beat reporters really talk him up. With Coleman, it sounds like an approach where they're going to have him learn a single position. They're not going to move him around the field. They're going to play him on the outside. So, which really wasn't the case at Florida State. At Florida State, they were featuring him all over. They even used him as a returner. They wanted to get him the ball in his hands as much as possible. Whereas Buffalo, we're going to play him outside. We're going to have him learn this spot. He's an outside receiver for us, and they're being very clear about that. But when it all comes down to it with Keon Coleman...
What if there is no hype? What if there is no hype piece? What if we don't get it? I know it's going to hit like a drug, like intravenously. I know it's going to hit when it hits. I remember, because guys, again, my memory of past seasons and past off seasons haunts me. It makes it very difficult to get through a day without my head just feeling it's going to split open when I hear some of this rhetoric. You do remember? Do you remember the catches in shorts with no pads from at back of the end zone for Quentin Johnston?
Oh yeah,
those hit hard, man. And we might get one of those from Keon Coleman, if not multiple. We had several from Quentin Johnston. My worry is, and the same thing with Pearsall, if he's on the NFI list. What if there's nothing?
Well, I thought that
on that.
I thought you closed that.
Oh my God!
I thought you closed that.
Oh my God! How did I?
You totally faked us out. You got us. We both froze up because I thought that was the cold close.
I did it again. I didn't have my finger on the button.
That was the close. That was the close.
God damn it! Here's all I'm gonna say. Keon Coleman, Ricky Pearsall. Well, no, here's what I'll say. At some point in his career, college, pro, at some point in his career, Keon Coleman will hopefully have a season with 60 or more catches. He hasn't done it yet. Eventually, maybe he will. Maybe he has a season with 800 or more receiving yards. That may happen. It may happen, and you guys, I'm sure you'll be very happy when it happens, if it happens, but I can tell you this, it's not going to happen. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.